So I guess what I was talking about, Idlib province in Syria, I had talked about that in, I don't know, maybe it was February, March, about how serious Idlib was, and that it was kind of it is the last stand for ISIS or ISIL, and that Syria wants to take them out. Complication is that ISIS is our own proxy army there. We're the ones who have been supporting ISIS to help overthrow Bashar al-Assad. So we don't want our guys to die. But more importantly for the US is that they don't want Syria to get rid of the United States, which has no legitimate business in Syria. So now it's really popping off, and I know that they're going to start saying that it's they're going to start saying that Syria's doing chemical weapons attacks. They were already setting up to blame something on Syria that got kind of caught and uncovered, but it seems that they're gearing up to do it again. And there are a lot of civilians in Idlib, so they're kind of getting caught in the crossfire. But Bashar gave them time to evacuate, so I don't know. I mean, not everybody can, I know, and it's going to be tragic no matter what. But the way that the U.S. is framing it is that Bashar is going to kill all these civilians, or that he's been killing all these civilians. And that ISIS somehow is, even though we defeated ISIS according to our president, well, they're back stronger than ever now, of course. Nothing funky going on there. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to see when you look at the motives and the history. And more motives. Anyway. So I forgot to mention when I was talking about Idlib, I forgot to mention that a F-22 fighter jet was shot down by the rebels on the ground, a Syrian F-22 jet. And so that was on the 14th, just a couple days ago. So that's a serious thing. Of course, they haven't really talked about it. The guys that shot it down haven't really talked about it much, because I think what they shot it down with is probably some American-made weapons. I mean, that might be the case regardless, but the thing about Syria, which is the whole reason we won't get out of there, is we want to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, because if we do that, then that breaks Russia. Russia's biggest source of revenue comes from liquid natural gas, LNG, that they sell to Europe via pipeline. And to deliver that via pipeline, the pipeline that they're using has to be usable. And what the United States' interest is in all that is, of course, corporate. What the corporations are, they're involved in investing in other oil pipeline projects that go around the Russian pipeline. I'll go into the pipelines in another story, but it basically is going to be taking liquid natural gas from Qatar and taking it to Western Europe. Now there's a reservoir underneath Qatar, shared between Qatar and Iran, that is a massive source of natural gas. Russia relies on their natural gas as their biggest source of revenue. They will protect that pipeline with everything they have. And if we persist, then we will be at war with Russia. Because they're not going to give that up. It's existential for them. They need it to survive. Or else they'll plunge right back down to early 90s catastrophe crash, that they will have no revenue, that they won't have any exports that are of that magnitude. So, of course, the U.S. won't give up easily because they can just pretend like they're not involved at all. We're just trying to save the people in Idlib, the poor civilians. And we're trying to defeat ISIS once again because we didn't really defeat ISIS when we were in Syria before, even though we announced that we had completely defeated ISIS. So the only way that the U.S. is going to get their hands on changing that pipeline is if Bashar al-Assad is out of office and we can put in our own, or the U.S. can put in their own leader, their own dictator, basically, that will allow us access to the pipeline, or to shut it off so that we can put our own in, because it goes straight through northern Syria. So there it is. That's why Russia won't let anybody near northern Syria. That's why they said that, if there are attacks on Damascus, there will be, that it's going to be a big problem. And of course, Israel has been bombing near Damascus. Scrappy do. Anyway, so I don't see how it's going to resolve, but Idlib is a really hot spot because it's the last stronghold of ISIS or al-Nusra or Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call them. The guys that we're supporting now, I'm trying to make sure don't get all killed in Idlib because, our military leaders, they're psychopaths. They don't care about the poor civilians, or else they would do something differently in Yemen. Instead of letting 10 million people starve to death in the next 6 months or 4 months, which is what UN says. UN says, and then by the end of the year, they expect, and I'm quoting, expect 10 million Yemenis to starve to death. That's another story too. Back to Idlib. If we cared about the Idlib civilians, come on. We care about staying in Syria so that we can get rid of Bashar al-Assad by convincing the world that he's this horrible dictator and that he has to be replaced. So there that is. I don't know where that can come to a conclusion. I've been talking about it for like 8 months, and it's not. It looked good when they had said that they're at the very edge of defeating ISIS / all the others. But Idlib has been the last stronghold, and I knew that was the point of contention because there was whole, don't you dare use chemical weapons because then we will attack you, when there's no reason for Bashar to use chemical weapons in Idlib. That would be the last thing he would want to do because it would turn world opinion against him, and he's almost won it. So why would he? It would be the most asinine thing a leader could do, would be to use chemical weapons. And I don't buy into when people try to say things such as, well, they're Muslims, they're crazy, they don't care, they just want to die anyways. Kind of, to me, that's bullshit. I really think that's bullshit a lot. In fact, I think that Muslims deserve an apology from the entire West because they didn't do anything in New York that they've been accused of. So therefore, they don't deserve the bad name that's been tossed around in the United States, at least. So much so that people are paranoid that they're in groups out in the middle of the country forming, terror cells that are going to, attack the whole country at once. Worse than 9/11 kind of fear mongering. Because the Muslims, the worst thing they ever did was live on top of our oil. That was a good way to get into where all of those places were under one flag, saying it's terrorists, Muslim terrorists, and we'll tell you where they are when we find out, because we want to go here, here, and here. Therefore, that's where they are, and that's where we are. Take care now.